Yes, Your Honor. Good afternoon. My name is Ronnie Kane, and I'm joined at table by Mr. Ian Dickerson
Good afternoon, Your Honor.
and Mr. McClay.
Good afternoon, Your Honor.
Good afternoon. Collectively, we represent the plaintiff in today's case, and we're joined at table by our party representative, Officer Taft.
Good afternoon.
Would the defense like to place appearances?
That'd be great if Your Honor is. Good afternoon, Your Honor. My name is Pranay Mangla. Alongside my co-counsel, Mr. Graham Umbenau. Good afternoon, Your Honor. We represent the defendant in today's trial, the Lampert family crime. We'll also be joined at counsel table today by the defendant, Mr. Lampert. Good afternoon, Your Honor.
Good afternoon. Your Honor, we do have a couple of preliminary matters to attend to. First, the plaintiff would like to invoke Rule 603 and 615, calling for the constructive swearing in and sequestration of all witnesses, barring party representatives, and noting that Officer Thorne is our party representative in this case. Okay. We'd also like to direct your attention to a couple of things in that binder in front of you. We can direct your attention to the stipulations first. And that's going to be stipulation 12. Stipulation 12 says that exhibits 1 and 2 have been pre-admitted. That's going to be this photo of the victim as well as a contract, and those can be referenced in opening statements. Okay. And then under that, stipulation 13 says that all hearsay objections have been waived to exhibit 3, which is an expense report. And then, Your Honor, since this is our first time appearing in your courtroom, we'd like to know your preferences for moving about the well, approaching the witness, opposing counsel, and the bench.
I ask that you ask before you approach opposing counsel or their witnesses, your own witness, you can approach freely, and then movement is fine, approach the bench and jury as you wish.
Yes, Your Honor. With that, the plaintiff is ready to proceed to openings.
Anything further from the defense?
Yes, Your Honor. A few things. First, we'd like to make note that our party representative in this trial will be Mr. Legacy Lampert. He'll be joining us at counsel table.
Okay.
Secondly, Your Honor, if you could go to the stipulations tab on the first page. Specifically, I'm looking at stipulation 8. This states that both parties waive all relevance objections and objections under Rule 403 for the direct examinations of Ms. Angel Ashmore and Gabby Gwilt.
Okay.
Next, Your Honor, if I could turn your attention to the case law. Specifically, I
found it.
Okay. Specifically, I'm looking at Machida v. Gwilt.
Okay.
Essentially, what this case law outlines is that a plaintiff assumes the risk of the defendant's conduct insofar as they are aware of it in its entirety.
Okay.
Lastly, Your Honor, we'd also like to make note that we will be joined today and I'd like to introduce our last witness, Ms. Angel Ashmore.
Good afternoon, Your Honor.
Good afternoon.
With that, we're ready to proceed to opening statements.
Okay. Does plaintiff have an opening statement?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Whenever you're ready.
Defense counsel, members of the jury, may it please the court. He asked for a blank, and they loaded a bullet. Last summer, crowds of people were gathered downtown for the last night of the Lampert family carnival. Everyone was there for the magic act. You see, the carnival hired a famous magician to close their show. His name was Max Maximilian. Max the Magnificent. You're going to hear that on July 14th, Mr. Maximilian walked on stage to perform a trick. But he never walked back off. You see, you're going to hear that the carnival had asked Mr. Maximilian to perform one of the most dangerous tricks in the book. It's called the bullet catch, and you're going to hear a lot about it through trial today. So I'll explain it for you now. Basically, Mr. Maximilian's assistant was supposed to aim a gun at him and fire a blank. Mr. Maximilian wouldn't be harmed, but he'd pull a bullet out of his mouth, making it look like he'd somehow caught the shot. That's what was supposed to happen. But on July 14th, you'll hear that something went wrong, and when the trigger was pulled, Mr. Maximilian was shot and killed. So what went wrong? Members of the jury are going to learn on July 14th last year, it wasn't a blank in Mr. Maximilian's gun. It was a bullet. We expect that the carnival's armor will admit that she bought both blanks and real bullets for the trick. She stored them together. And so on the day of Max's show, you're going to hear that the carnival was rushing to get ready. They weren't being careful. So even though Mr. Maximilian asked for a blank, you'll hear that the ammunition got mixed up. And the carnival loaded a bullet. So now we're in court bringing a wrongful death lawsuit against the Lambert family carnival. Because when someone like Mr. Maximilian passes away because a company put him in harm's way, our legal system says that's reckless, and the company is liable. Now, as the plaintiff, we've taken on the burden to prove the 4 elements of our suit: duty, breach, cause, and harm. But before this trial, the defense and I actually already agreed on the first one, that the carnival did owe Mr. Maximilian that duty of care. So all we have to prove is that they breached that duty, and that their breach was the direct and proximate cause of Mr. Maximilian's death. We have to prove our case to you by a preponderance of the evidence. That just means more likely than not. So at the end of this trial, if what we show you is more likely, then the law says you have to find the carnival liable. We'll prove our case to you by calling 2 witnesses to the stand. Through their testimony, we'll reconstruct the accident that cost Mr. Maximilian his life. We'll prove that he asked for a blank, and it was the carnival that loaded a bullet. To tell you about Mr. Maximilian's experience with the carnival, you're going to hear from his assistant, Gabby Gray, to tell you that Mr. Maximilian asked for a blank and some guns, not bullets. But to tell you that the carnival got both. And that's when Officer Tad Thorne will tell you one of those bullets could have ended Mr. Maximilian's life. Officer Thorne is one of the people who investigated this case. And he'll tell you he found evidence that the carnival had bullets on site. He found evidence that one of those bullets was loaded in Mr. Maximilian's skull. Members of the jury, throughout the testimony of every witness, I want you to remember the one person who isn't with us today. This is Mr. Maximilian. And it was the carnival's job to protect this man's life. That's something we all agree on. It was their job to keep him safe. That's why he trusted them when he asked for a blank. And today you're going to find out they broke that trust when they loaded a bullet. That's why today the plaintiff is asking that you find the Lambert family carnival liable. Thank you.
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed?
You're right.
He knew the risks and he still went through. We agree with plaintiff counsel. This is a tragedy. A magician dead, a friend dead, a son dead. Where we disagree is who is responsible. Because when a surfer goes out into the ocean in rough weather, and if they get knocked out, unconscious, drowned, well, you don't blame the surfer. When a rock climber tries to climb a mountain without ropes and they fall off, well, you don't blame the rocks. Sometimes tragedies are just that, tragic. And that's why we're here. Because we're gonna argue that, well, that magician, he knew what he was getting. He understood the risks of that trick. He understood the risks of that gun, of those blanks, and he still went ahead. And in doing so, we'll take on a burden of our own. A burden to show that it's more likely than not that that magician, well, he knew what he was getting into. That he understood the dangers of the trick, and that he understood the dangers that would be there on that night. And we'll meet that burden by bringing 2 witnesses to the stand. First, we'll call the armorer, Angel Ashley, who will tell you about how she was in charge of the equipment for that trick. And well, she'll tell you that not everything was perfect about that equipment, but that she communicated that to the magician. That she went out of her way, went to his house and told him, this is dangerous, you need to beware. And then we'll call a second witness. We'll call the owner of that car, who will follow through with that same line of thought. He'll tell you that, well, everything he knew, he communicated to the magician. That he told him about the weapon, that he told him about the trick itself. And with those two witnesses, that's how you'll see that, well, this magician, he understood the risks he was under. Now, plaintiff counsel mentioned that they're going to tell you that a bullet was in the gun that day. We don't believe that's true. But because that witness, that police officer who's going to tell you that, well, the carnival owner, he'll tell you that that cop has been after him for years. That after failed investigation, well, finally he sees his day in court and he's taking his chance. With all of that, we'll ask you to find the defendant not liable. Thank you.
Yes, Your Honor. This time the plaintiff calls Ms. Gabby Gray to the stand. Ma'am, could you introduce yourself to the members of the jury?
Hi, my name's Gabby Gray.
Ms. Gray, what do you do for a living?
I'm a magician.
How exactly did you get into magic?
My dad. Growing up, my mom and we'd always go to Paris to watch him perform. Actually, I ended up doing my apprenticeship at one of his favorite magic shops there, a place called Meyer's.
Ma'am, did you know Mr. Maximilian?
I knew Max,
Do you recognize a photo of Max if you saw it today?
of course.
Your Honor, at this time approaching opposing counsel with what's been pre-admitted as exhibit 1. Permission to approach the witness. Ma'am, do you recognize that photo?
Yeah. That's my Max.
Tell us where this was taken.
It was in Paris, right off the banks of the Seine.
So, ma'am, how do you know Max?
He was my best friend. He was my business partner. A year ago today, I killed him.
Well, ma'am, we'll talk about the events of July 14th in a moment. But first, I want to back up. I want to talk about how you knew Max. Can you tell the jury when you met him?
6 years ago. I still remember it like it was yesterday. I was still at Mayette's at the time. It's down by the Chateau de Versailles. It's right across from the Orangerie. Looked up from the register. There he was.
What did he do?
He asked me a question in really broken French. My French was flawless at the time, but I must have stumbled over my words. He was just so handsome. He made some joke about two Americans in Paris, and before I knew it, I agreed to meet him that afternoon.
Objection, Your Honor. At this time, to hear
Your Honor, it just goes towards the subsequent actions of the witness. We don't care whether or not the statement that Max made about 2 people in Paris is true. It's just a joke. It's just to push forward the testimony.
Do you have a response?
Yes, Your Honor. Nonetheless, it's still not a court statement. It's being offered for the truth. They haven't explained what subsequent action they're eliciting from the statement specifically.
I think that's what the testimony's about. No.
Yes, Your Honor.
Now, you just mentioned you went off with Max. Did you continue to see him after that?
Oh yeah. He swept me off my feet. Pretty soon we were spending all our time together. I mentioned that I dabbled in illusions. He offered me a position as his assistant. We flew to the States.
Now, ma'am, earlier you mentioned that you and Max were business partners. When exactly did that start?
Immediately. When we got to the States, we started touring together.
I gotta ask Ms. Gray, do you know who the gentleman sitting on the other end of council table there is?
Yeah. We worked for their carnival.
What exactly were the terms of that partnership?
We were independent contractors. We were paid a set amount for every show that we did. We signed a contract.
Would you recognize that contract you saw today in court?
I would.
Your Honor, at this time, I'd like to direct the witness to Exhibit 2 in that binder. It was pre-admitted before today's trial. Let me know when you're there, Ms. Gray.
I'm there.
What exactly does this contract say about your agreement with the Lambert Family Carnival?
It explains that we were independent contractors. But at the end of the day, Legacy had the final say in what we did. If we didn't do what Legacy wanted, Legacy didn't have to pay.
Now, before you signed this contract, did you have any discussions with the defendant about what they were going to provide to you and Max?
Of course. Mr. Lampert said that all our equipment, it was going to be maintained, it was going to be in working order, and that he'd provide us everything we needed, that he had the best prop master in the business.
Who was the prop master for the Lambert Family Carnival?
Angel Ashmore.
What exactly did your act for Mr. Lampert entail?
Max and I, we did some card tricks, some illusions, we did some tricks with some rings.
Did your July 14th show include those same illusions?
It did. But we were adding a new act for that night, something called the bullet catch.
Why would you add that into your act?
Legacy said our act wasn't flashy enough, said that his carnival needed more revenue and that this act was the way to get it.
How exactly does a trick like the bullet catch work?
Max and I, we were both going to be on stage. I was going to point the gun at Max and shoot it, but in reality, the gun was loaded with blanks and he would use sleight of hand to make the bullet appear.
Is this an act that you and Max would typically perform?
No, I'd only done it twice in my career.
So, ma'am, can you tell the members of the jury exactly how you prepared the weapon for that act?
The gun on July 14th?
Yes, ma'am.
I didn't. I relied on the prop master, Angel Ashmore, to prepare the gun.
Well, Ms. Gray, I gotta ask. So the person firing that gun, why didn't you prepare it yourself?
Sir, I ask myself that question every day. Maybe I should have, but you have to understand that in the entertainment industry, everybody has a role. Sometimes it can be more dangerous to disrupt those roles. My job was to fire the weapon, and Angel's job was to prepare it.
Do you know what steps Angel took to prepare that gun?
I do,
How do you know?
because I talked with Angel about it. I said we needed a new gun. I said we needed blanks to practice with, and Angel assured me repeatedly that they'd get that for us.
Objection, Your Honor, at this time to hearsay as to Ms. Gray's statements.
What statement specifically would you be referencing?
The statement she made to Ms. Ashford.
Your Honor, those go towards subsequent action. In order to understand the context for Angel's replies, we have to understand what Angel's replying to. And the issue of Ms. Ashmore's hearsay has actually been ruled on prior to today's trial. In the pre-trial order, number 1, through vicarious liability, all of Angel's statements are opposing party statements in today's trial.
Response, Your Honor.
This is not Angel, correct?
No, this is Ms. Gabby Craig.
Okay, so I think he's objecting to her comments, not Angel's.
Yes, Your Honor, I was just saying that her comments to Angel go towards subsequent action. In order to understand the context of what Angel's replying to, we have to understand what Ms. Gray was asking in the first place.
Response.
Yeah.
Respectfully, Your Honor, we disagree. Core to the plaintiff's case in today's trial is that they made requests that weren't fulfilled. Her explaining her request for the members of the jury is absolutely being used for the truth, that they did ask for those things and that later they weren't delivered.
I'm going to sustain the objection, stricken from the record.
Yes, Your Honor.
Did Angel Ashmore ever say anything to you about the gun that concerned you?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I looked at the guns, I had concerns. Angel said looks can be deceiving. Said that the blank bullets for practice were on back order.
Did you ever have any concerns over the ammunition for that weapon?
I did. I thought I had seen a box labeled bullets with Angel, but I trusted Legacy, I trusted the prop master. There would have been no reason for live ammunition to be on site.
Objection, Your Honor. Hearsay as to the word bullets. Opposing counsel is using it to offer that the truth of the matter, that box actually contained live bullets.
Your Honor, the witness actually stated in her answer that she has no idea whether it had live bullets or not. She was saying the box itself is concerned.
I agree.
Yes, Your Honor.
Ms. Gray, did you ever talk to anyone about any concerns you had about that weapon?
Talked to Legacy. Said I was concerned the axe wasn't ready and Legacy lost it.
What do you mean Legacy lost it?
said that if I tried to back out of the act, that we were gonna be sued for breach of contract and we couldn't afford a lawsuit.
All right, ma'am, I know this may be hard, but I'd like if you could walk us through July 14th. How did that show go?
We did all our normal tricks. They went off without a hitch. Everything was perfect. And then it was time for the grand finale. It was time for the bullet catch. So I went and I got the gun. I pointed it at Max and I shot it.
Miss Gray, what happened after you shot that gun?
I expected to hear cheers. Every time we'd done it before, I had heard cheers, but this time I think I heard screams. I think there was running. I don't remember, sir.
Ma'am, is there anything that you can remember about that night?
The blood. There was so much of it. I didn't know that a person could bleed that much, but it was like I was paralyzed in place. I couldn't move. I couldn't help. I couldn't breathe. And my best friend, he was lying on the ground next to me.
Miss Gray, when we first started talking today, I told the members of the jury that you killed Max. Why would you phrase it that way?
I trusted that the gun that I held on July 14th was safe. But I put my trust in the wrong person. I'm the one who shot that gun. I'm the one who pulled the trigger and now my best friend's dead.
Thank you, Miss Gray. Your Honor, I have no more questions for the witness at this time.
Yes, sir. May I proceed?
Yes.
Good afternoon, Ms. Gray.
Good afternoon.
I know this must be difficult, so if you ever need a moment, just let me know, all right?
Thank you.
I want to start by talking about that contract that you brought up at the beginning of your direct examination, all right?
Okay.
Now, you first started talking to the Lambert family carnival in May of 2023, correct?
That's right. We learned that the carnival was coming to town and we thought we could get a job there.
Right, so you reached out to their owner and then you began negotiating a contract to work.
Yes, sir.
In these negotiations, you made requests of what you needed from the carnival, right?
Yes. We said that we needed a new gun and that we needed blanks to practice it with.
Now, can you flip back to that contract, Exhibit 2?
Sure.
This contract never says that they'll provide you a new gun or brand new blanks, do they?
No, that was on a different form. This one says that LFC promises to provide and maintain any needed props. Also a safe work environment to the extent that LFC can.
Now, we'll get to the rest of this contract in a moment, but I want to clarify something you just mentioned. Is it your testimony that there is another contract you signed outlining requests for the bullet catch?
No, that was a verbal conversation that I had with Legacy.
Right, this was the only contract that you had in writing with the company.
Yes, this is what we had. Said that they would provide and maintain what we needed. And what we needed was a new gun.
Right, but what they said at the bottom, something you didn't mention on your direct examination, was they would only provide a safe work environment to the extent that they could. Am I reading that correctly?
Right. They could have gotten us that new gun.
Well, you understand that their abilities could change over time, right?
What do you mean, sir?
Well, their budget, it would fluctuate, right?
I would hope that a budget would never be a hindrance to safety, but I suppose in a carnival, the budgets could change. Yes.
Right, you knew that when you were negotiating this contract, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And at the bottom, that's your signature, isn't it?
Yes. I signed the contract.
Right above that, that's Mr. Maximilian's signature.
Exactly. After they said that they would provide and maintain what we needed, we signed the contract.
So you signed the contract, even though they never guaranteed they would get you a brand new gun. Isn't that true?
Actually, we weren't gonna put the bullet catch in our act at that time. We weren't doing it because we were concerned with safety. So the time we signed the contract, that wasn't even a question.
Well, ma'am, that's a yes to my question. You signed this contract even though they never guaranteed you brand new products, including a brand new gun, right?
Of course, sir, the gun, we never would have been using one. That wasn't part of our act at the time that we signed the contract. Legacy made us do it after the fact.
Well, I want to clarify that for the members of the jury. Who first brought up the bullet catch? Now, as you just told us, you've been telling the members of the jury.
Objection testifying to who brought up the bullet catch first. There was no question at the end of that comment.
Response, Your Honor. It was a signpost. I was saying I wanted to discuss who brought it up first. That's my line of questioning now, to establish exactly who it was.
Okay, overruled.
So I want to take a moment to clarify who brought that trick up first.
Sure.
Now, you've been telling the members of the jury that it was Mr. Lambert who forced you to do that trick, right?
We had a meeting in the office. Max said he wasn't comfortable doing it. And Legacy said that we had to. Said that we'd be sued for breach of contract if we didn't.
Well, ma'am, before Mr. Lambert or anyone else from the Lambert family carnival brought up that trick, the two of you actually considered performing. Isn't that true?
Right, that's exactly what I was talking about earlier. We considered it and we decided that it was too dangerous. So we didn't implement it.
You didn't just consider it, ma'am. Before he ever brought up the bullet catch, you actually went through the effort of renting a gun to practice with.
Of course, we wanted to see if the act was feasible, but at the end of the day, we just weren't comfortable with it.
Before he ever brought up the trick, you went through the effort of getting blank bullets to practice shooting at Mr. Maximilian.
Yeah, we practiced it 7 times and we decided it was too risky, that we were uncomfortable.
But ma'am, in that conversation you've been telling us, it wasn't Mr. Lambert who first brought up the bullet catch, was it?
So he asked us to walk through all our performances, everything we'd ever done in the past. Max said we'd done the bullet catch in the past, and that's when Legacy said that was the act we had to do.
Well, I want to clarify specifically what was said. Being precise here is important for the jury. Mr. Lambert asked you if there were any new acts that you could perform in future shows, right?
Yeah, he asked us for a list of everything we'd performed in the past.
Ma'am, I'm gonna need you to get a clear yes or no on this specific phrase. He asked you if there were any acts that you could perform at the new show, right?
Right, he asked us to go through the list of everything we'd done previously to see if there was something that would fit the bill, fit what he was looking for.
And after Mr. Lambert asked if you had any ideas for new tricks to perform at the July show, it was Mr. Maximilian who first brought up the bullet catch, wasn't it?
It was. We discussed it. Max at one point told Mr. Lambert he wasn't comfortable with it. And Mr. Lambert said that was the only act that was acceptable. It was the one we had to do.
But to be clear, it was Mr. Maximilian who first brought it up, wasn't it?
Right. In that meeting when we were discussing it, Max talked about it.
Then I want to talk about if Max knew the risks associated with that trick.
Okay.
You know that Mr. Maximilian had undergone multiple firearm safety trainings before that conversation, right?
Yes. And I myself, of course, was licensed to own a firearm.
You know that Mr. Maximilian had performed that trick multiple times before that conversation.
Exactly. We had practiced it before. We had performed it together before. And because that in this case, we would have to point the gun directly at Max, we decided it was too risky and that we were no longer comfortable doing it.
But at the end of that conversation, you still agreed to perform that trick, didn't you?
Yeah. You know, we couldn't afford a lawsuit. This was the only livelihood we had.
Mr. Maximilian still agreed to perform the bullet catch, even though he knew it was dangerous.
Yeah. I think about it every day.
Thank you for your time. No further questions.
Any regrets?
Yes, Your Honor, but first I would like to inquire as to the time we have remaining.
There are 52 seconds remaining for direct examination.
Then, yes, Your Honor, briefly. Now, opposing counsel just asked you about that contract. Is it still in front of you, ma'am?
It's here.
When you signed that contract, did you agree to do the bullet catch?
No.
When did you agree to do the bullet catch?
when Legacy said that we'd be sued for breach of contract if we didn't.
What does this contract say about if the Lambert Family Carnival did not like the act you were performing?
Well, sir, it says we wouldn't be paid.
And one last question, Ms. Gray. Did anyone ever warn you that there would be a live round in that gun on July 14th?
No,
No further questions at this time, Your Honor. I would just ask to approach and retrieve Exhibit 1 from the witness.
No, Your Honor. Yes, Your Honor. At this time, the defense calls Miss Angel Ashford to the stand. May I proceed? Good afternoon. Could you please introduce yourself to the members of the jury?
Hi, I'm Angel Ashmore.
What do you do for a living?
I work with Lambert Family Carnival. I'm their prop master.
How long have you been with the Lambert Family Carnival?
For the past 5 years, ever since I graduated high school.
Why'd you start your career with a traveling carnival?
I loved magic. You know, growing up, I wasn't the smartest or the funniest or the most athletic. You get the gist. But I watched a video of David Blaine levitating over a car when I was 14 years old. I thought it was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. But, you know, I couldn't do a card trick myself. So I figured I would just support the magician from the sidelines.
Miss Ashmore, do you know why you're here in court today?
Of course I do. For Max.
Who's Max?
Max the Magnificent. He's one of the best magicians of our time. He passed away at our carnival last summer.
When did you first meet Mr. Max Miller?
That same summer, my boss, Legacy, said that we'd be hiring him as our summer magician, and I was over the moon.
How long had you known him for before?
Well, long before that. You know, Max got me through a really rough time in my life. It was right after my dad had passed away. It was a motorcycle accident. It was pretty sudden. And I would watch YouTube videos of Max making a flower appear for a little girl in the audience, or making a dog teleport from one end of the stage to the other. He made me laugh. So, you know, obviously when I knew I'd be working with him, I was thrilled.
So at the Lambert Family Carnival, how closely did you work with Max?
Very closely. I managed all of Max's props, even for the bullet catch.
And I want to start by walking the jury through your preparation for that trip. When did you first find out that Max would be doing that trick?
In late June, about 3 weeks before we'd be doing the trick. My boss told me that I'd be in charge of getting the gun and the blanks.
How did you react when you found out he'd be performing the bullet catch?
I think I was silent at first. I mean, I almost felt disappointed that he was doing the trick.
How'd you feel disappointed?
No, I almost wanted to be mad at him. The bullet catch is an infamously dangerous trick. I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist or even a magician to know that holding a real gun up at someone is risky. I thought Max of all people would know better.
Now, you mentioned a moment ago that you were responsible for getting the gun and the blanks for that trick. How exactly did you go about doing it?
Well, as soon as I learned that he'd be doing the trick, I went straight to the nearest gun shop and I bought a reputable gun secondhand. It's the best we could do. then I ordered bullets online, blanks, but they didn't come in on time.
So what did you do after the blanks didn't arrive on time?
I had to turn to plan B. I went back to the gun store and I got blanks from them, but it was a 2-for-1 sale, blanks and bullets. I made sure to separate them. I was gonna separate them, but given that it was days before the trick, Max hadn't had a chance to practice yet. I just decided it was time to tell him about everything.
Then I want to focus the jury's attention on that meeting you had with Max. When was it?
It was 2 days before the trick.
And where did the two of you meet?
I went to Max's apartment. Never gone out of my way like that before.
Then why did you go to Max's apartment this time?
How dangerous this trick was. I thought if I could just sit with him and look him in the eye and tell him how I really thought about the trick, he might change his mind.
What exactly did you say to Max during that meeting?
I was upfront with him. I told him that even on the best of days, the bullet catch could still go wrong.
Objection to hearsay to this witness's own statements.
Response, Your Honor. Your Honor, this goes to the subsequent action of Mr. Maximilian, if I may proffer. Your Honor, we're then going to proffer that Mr. Maximilian still went ahead with performing the trick. We're using it for the effect on the listener in subsequent action, that he was made aware of these things, but still continue.
Your Honor, pursuant to your prior ruling on subsequent action with hearsay, you did rule that the standard is not to whether or not the response would matter as much. That the response is what matters and that it doesn't matter as much whether or not the witness led that response, the person speaking. So I would still maintain that it's hearsay.
I'm gonna overrule it now based on the fact that it's effective on the listener, not subsequent action, but feel free to re-raise it.
Ms. Ashmore, what exactly did you tell Max during that meeting?
I told him that even if everything went perfectly, there was still a chance that the trick could go wrong. I just asked him if the risk was even worth it.
How did Max respond?
He nodded. He was quiet for a bit. And then he asked when the soonest time he could practice. He said he was still going to go through with it.
Then I want to turn your attention to the day of the trick. Did you speak to Max then?
Not Max, no, but his assistant, yes.
What did you say?
Well, his assistant was trying to get the blanks to practice, but I hadn't had a chance to triple check them yet. So I told her to just hold off for a second so I can check them. I just started feeling sick to my stomach.
How did you feel that?
Because Max hadn't had a chance to practice. I mean, it was the day of, and it just felt like everything was moving too fast. I thought there was a chance that Max might change his mind given what I told him, but he never did.
Miss Ashmore, you were there when Max performed the bullet catch?
No.
Where were you?
I wasn't there. I didn't see it.
I know this must be different, but I'm gonna have to ask you to walk through the night's events for the members of the jury. When did you first realize the bullet catch had gone wrong?
I could hear cheers. Stuck in the prop tent that night, but I could hear them cheering for Max the entire time. Making a tiger appear, cheer. Linking reins, cheer. Saw in half, cheer. People loved him. And then I heard the gun go off, and a part of me just knew. Screams. He was screaming. I don't even remember standing up from my prop tent before I was running across the ring to him. And that's when I really saw. That's when I really saw what had happened.
Did you speak to Max?
I tried. I was sitting in the desk next to him and his head was. Oh. I wanted to tell him that it would be okay. I could see that he was dying. Then I noticed he was trying to say something to me.
What did Max say?
Pulled me in and he said, you were right. I never should have done it. And he was
Thank you for your time, Ms. Ashmore. I have no further questions.
Yes, Your Honor. Hi, Ms. Ashmore, I understand that this is a difficult topic. But first, I'd like to direct your attention to your affidavit. It's in that notebook next to you. Let me know when you find it.
Where would it be?
It's
There's a lot in here.
Page 4, line 125.
Okay.
Ma'am, on direct examination, you said that you bought the blanks in a 2-for-1 sale, right?
Yeah, I did.
Now, that's your affidavit, right?
Yes,
It's your name on that front page that you just saw.
yes,
Looks the same as the last time you saw it, right?
yes, it is.
Now, please read silently while I read aloud. Starting at line 125. Eventually, I found blank cartridges in the same place I found the gun, the nearby gun club. However, there was one complication. The gun club refused to sell me just blanks. Instead, I had to buy both blanks and actual bullets. Apparently, it was some CYA in the rare event that some actual bullets ended up in the box of blanks or vice versa. Since the gun club didn't guarantee that it was only one or the other. It wasn't ideal, but it was my best option. Did I read that correctly, ma'am?
Yes, you did.
Nowhere in there do you mention a sale, right?
No, they advertised it as 2-for-1.
Nowhere in that affidavit do you describe it as 2-for-1, right?
Objection, Your Honor, at this time to hearsay. There's been no direct contradiction elicited. Yes, sir.
Nowhere in that affidavit do you mention a 2-for-1 sale, right?
No, it says they had to sell me both blanks and actual bullets. It was 2 for the price of 1 because.
And if you continue reading that sentence, it says because they
Objection, Your
can't
Honor, it's
guarantee.
argumentative. I'd ask that Ms. Ashmore be allowed to finish her answer.
It was 2 types of bullets for 1. They were mixed together. They were cheaper. I had to separate them.
And ma'am, if you keep reading that sentence that you stopped halfway through, it says because they could not guarantee whether or not there were bullets and blanks in that box, right?
Yes, that's true.
Ma'am, when you were instructed to write this affidavit, they told you to include all relevant information, right?
Yes, of course, I did.
And you thought it was relevant to include that it was a box mixed with bullets and blanks, right?
Yes, it was.
You thought it was relevant to include that they could not guarantee whether that box had blanks or bullets in it.
Yes, that's true.
And ma'am, you did not think it was relevant to include that it was a 2-for-1 sale, right?
No, it was 2 types of bullets in the same box. It was the best that I could do. I had to take them back and triple check them just so that Max would be safe.
Objection, non-responsive, Your Honor. That was not an answer to the question I asked.
You asked.
I asked nothing about the safety of the bullets. I just asked if they couldn't guarantee that the bullets were separated or not, and she went on to discuss Max and anything that Max asked for. It's completely unresponsive.
Response, Your Honor. Your Honor, we're in a special jurisdiction today in Murado, under which we have a modified rules of evidence that don't follow the Midlands rules or the federal rules of evidence. A non-responsive on cross-examination does not fall into those rules of evidence. Happy to provide you a copy.
I agree. I think that you can just ask her to be very clear. So, okay.
Yes, Your Honor. Ma'am, on direct examination, you talked about your job as a prop master with the Lampert Family Carnival, right?
Yes, I do.
You talked about how you work for Mr. Lampert.
I do. Yes.
You discussed how it was your job to ensure the safety of all the props for the Lampert Family, right?
That's true. Yes.
But this wasn't just your job initially, right?
No, it wasn't. I used to have a lot of help and a lot of training.
You used to have 2 prop master's assistants, right?
Yes, that's true.
Mr. Lambert fired both of those assistants, right?
He did, and obviously I had to prove to myself and to him that I could do the work of 3 people, but I was able to. I wanted to be here so bad.
Ma'am, I'm not asking you about the work you were able to do. I just asked you if Mr. Lambert fired those 2 prop masters, and he did, right?
Yes, he was able to. I proved myself.
And then he cut your salary by 10%, right?
He did.
Is that something a boss typically does when you proved yourself to be such a good employee that he could fire the other 2 people he was paying?
Objection, Your Honor, at this time to argumentative and speculative. This witness can't speak to the mindset of Mr. Lambert or his regular practices.
Yes, Your Honor. But you would agree with me, though, that after those 2 prop master's assistants were fired, you felt strained, right?
Well, sure, it was an adjustment, but I think I could handle it.
You had a lot more work to do than you had previously.
Of course.
All of the props that you were managing before, well, you were running up between all of them, right?
Well, sure, I had to maintain all of them.
And this wasn't just for Max's act, this was for every act of the entire carnival, right?
Yeah, that's true.
You would say you were stretched pretty thin, right?
On some days, yeah.
You would agree with me that the props were in poor shape?
No, I worked day and night to make sure that they were in working condition.
Is it your testimony that the props were not in poor shape?
No, they probably looked pretty rough, but they were all safe and working.
But they were in poor shape, ma'am?
Yeah, if you were looking at them, yeah.
A lot of the props for some of the acts, they were breaking down, right?
Yeah, that's true, but none of the props which concern safety. So-
Objection, Your Honor, at this time under Rule 404, inadmissible character evidence may be heard.
Sure.
Your Honor, opposing counsel is using this to offer propensity evidence to say that just because other props were breaking down, the same thing occurred with the fire in this case.
Your Honor, we're not alleging any propensity in the matter. We're not discussing the firearm at all. This goes towards specifically the witness being strained in her workplace. Because the other props were breaking down, she had a lot more work to do. I was gonna get into that in my next question.
Okay, overruled for now.
Yes, Your Honor.
Ma'am, because you spent so much time fixing those other props, Max's props fell on the back burner, right?
Some of his stuff like batons and cards, I mean, yeah, but the gun was so important.
Ma'am, I'm not asking you about the gun, just asking about Max's props.
Objection, Your Honor, argumentative.
Yeah, some of his tricks, but when he said he was doing the bullet catch, everything changed, including the way I went about fixing his props.
Now, ma'am, you just mentioned Max's gun. I wanted to ask you a couple of questions about your firearm safety criteria. You took 1 class, right?
I did. I took a class with the National Carnival Association.
Right. This wasn't a gun safety club or anything like that, right?
It was a gun safety course with the National Carnival Association.
Right, you took a gun safety course online with the Carnival Association, right?
I did, yeah, that's what was required to be a certified prop master.
This was a 3-hour video course, right?
It was, yes.
Which you watched on 3 times speed, correct?
I sped it up and I aced the quiz after.
You watched it on 3 times speed, right?
I did, yeah,
Then you took that course in 2019, correct?
that's true.
Mr. Maximilian, you joined the Lambert Family Carnival in 2023.
I did, yeah.
You didn't update your firearm safety. You didn't take another firearm safety course in 2023, did you?
No, updating it wasn't necessary. If you passed the course, it was good for a number of years.
And between 2019 to 2023, you never handled a firearm, right?
We've never done a trick that dangerous before now.
So the first time you handled a firearm after you took that course, well, it was 5 years later, right?
That's true. And like I said, we've never done a trick that dangerous before. That's why I felt like I had to go to Max and tell him about it.
And that firearm is the one that killed Max on July 14, 2023, right?
Objection, Your Honor, at this time pursuant to Rule 701. This is an inadmissible expert opinion that may be heard.
What was the question?
That weapon was the one that killed Max on July 14, 2020?
Response, Your Honor?
I think her whole thing is that she knows it's that gun, so I'm gonna remove it for now.
Yes, sir.
I'm gonna ask you one more time. That weapon that Max was used in Max's act in 2023, well, that was the first gun you'd ever managed as a prop master, right?
Time has expired.
Your Honor, I asked that the witness be allowed to finish the answer to the question.
Is that okay? Is that allowed?
Sure,
Sure,
if both parties are amenable to it.
it's only Saturday, what else are we doing?
Yes, that was the gun.
No further questions.
No redirect, Your Honor. We just asked them this after will be allowed to set.
Sure, and then. Minute. Right, so as long as it's back here, balance in 447.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Need a hammer.
Oh, these chairs, man.
That's what I'm saying, I'm like, I'm too old to fit in little flashing Are you watching what happened to Trump?
Yeah, so the shooter is down and one of the people standing behind him got killed. And he got shot.
Standing behind Trump?
Yeah.
Is that why there's blood on his face?
No.
No, Trump was
got shot.
grazed by the bullet.
Yeah, Trump got grazed by the bullet, but the person standing
Oh, he
like
got killed.
behind him got killed and the shooter got killed.
Who was it? Was it like?
They're literally, they just, two are dead at the Trump rally. He got shot, like, and the shooter is dead. But you know what?
Where
Like,
was it?
Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania, yeah. Has President Biden said anything yet? Have you guys seen?
Oh, I have no idea. Just somebody sent it to me. It's a good letter.
I haven't seen it. Yeah. So the shooter's dead and 2 bystanders are dead. They got shot, they were standing behind him. Trump. Wow. That was so sad.
Do they know who the shooter was?
They're not saying. It's weird because when you look, you don't see anyone go down immediately. They said that they were out of control, like, okay. So like, they're just going to send the first schedule. And then the second schedule. Like second, third. Yeah. As from Eric, they just like send us our schedule. For real.
Yeah.
It's like watching. It's
Yeah. So, I mean, the prosecutor on that case wasn't even actually a prosecutor. The defense attorney that they brought in as a special prosecutor, which makes no sense. And if it was civil, it'd be legal malpractice. So I have no idea.
The prosecution or the defense was.
Yeah, no, I know.
So the defense, it's actually really interesting. If you look into it, I know it's so nerdy, but like, I look into it, like.
We're getting.
So they waited, yeah, exactly.
Pretend I'm not doing this.
Yeah, they waited, they know they were doing this, and so they waited until the trial actually started because they knew that they couldn't come along with the discovery of that. And so by putting in that objection, the judge had to make a really like debating and right then and there about whether or not that they had to be given ample time to like look into all the stuff, so she dismissed it with prejudice, which means that he's completely off the.
He's good.
Yeah, wow, I guess so.
Can we reference that in case?
You wanna do, also when you're doing, you just get up and leave for coffee and come back and go. All right, we have everybody, are we good to go?
Yes, Your Honor, plaintiff is back ready to proceed.
Perfect. Does plaintiff want to call a second witness?
Yes, Your Honor, but before we call our witness to the stand, we'd like to read a stipulation onto the record, if that's all right with you. It's gonna be stipulation 16. Stipulation 16 states that Exhibit 8 was found on July 15th, 2023, inside of the Lambert Family Carnival's prop tent alongside other bullets identical to Exhibit 8. With that, we're ready to call our first witness.
Okay.
Plaintiff calls Tab Thorne to the stand. Good afternoon. Would you please introduce yourself to the members of the jury?
Good afternoon. My name is Officer Tab Thorne.
What do you do for a living?
I'm an investigator with the Murado Bureau of Investigation. I mostly work on financial crimes, but I've kind of run the gamut on all the different types of crimes over my years, so I help out wherever they need me to.
What experience do you have as an investigator?
Well, I was a beat cop right out of high school, and then over the years, I kind of worked my way up. I made detective just 4 years into my career, and then I did that for almost a decade.
What sort of training did you get to become a detective?
Well, I had to take months of courses before I actually became a detective and could start investigating. And then, being a detective, every day on the job, I was learning new things. So on the job training, but it kept it interesting. I really loved being a detective.
How'd you get involved in this case?
Last summer, I was investigating the Lambert Family Carnival for financial crimes. But I was at the scene when one of their magicians, Maximilian, was shot on stage and killed. And the local PD here asked me to join in on the investigation.
So which investigation are you here to talk about today?
I'm here to talk about the shooting investigation only, not the investigation of those financial crimes.
Officer Thorne, have you been present throughout trial today?
Yes, ma'am, I have.
So we heard today, during opening statements, that defense counsel is alleging that you've had it out for Mr. Lambert for years now. Was Mr. Lambert the focus of your shooting investigation?
Not at all. We were looking into the employees at the carnival, specifically the armorer Angel Ashmore, to see if the carnival followed proper steps. Legacy Lambert was not a part of that investigation.
So why are you testifying in this trial?
Well, I was one of the officers who worked on the case. I heard that there was a trial going on, and I thought I might have some helpful information to add.
When did you start investigating the Lambert Family Carnival for financial crimes?
I started the financial crime investigation in June of last year, working undercover at one of the prize booths. And then I was there on scene on July 14th when the shooting happened.
What did you find in your financial investigation?
Nothing. We were looking to see if there was any discrepancies between what they were reporting and what they were earning, but we didn't find anything. So that's when the shooting became the sole focus of my investigation.
When did you start your investigation into the shooting at the carnival?
July 14th, the day of the shooting. I was working undercover that day, and I was actually in the audience while the trick went wrong.
What did you do when you saw that Mr. Maximilian had been hurt on stage?
I just jumped right into action. I mean, I totally blew my cover, but you don't really have a choice in a situation like that. So I roped off the scene. I tried to get Mr. Maximilian some medical attention if possible. And then I waited for the local PD to arrive.
What happened when those officers arrived?
They started interviewing a few witnesses, and then they asked me to join in on their investigation.
Now, how did that investigation start?
Well, the next day, the chief of police started delegating different task forces to do different things. There was a group of people executing a warrant at the carnival itself. I was placed on the interviewing team to try to see if we could find information from the employees or people around town.
So what did you find in your interviews?
Well, since the gun wasn't able to be recovered, our first order of business is trying to figure out where the gun was bought from. So after speaking to a few witnesses, we were able to locate the seller.
Did you ever speak with the person who sold that gun?
I did. We found out that he was a member of a local gun club, so I went down with another officer to interview him.
What did you learn from that conversation?
We learned that the carnival's armorer, Angel Ashmore, had purchased the gun from that gun club, as well as blanks and bullets. So we started to investigate that more to see if the gun could have been loaded with a bullet.
So what was the next step in your investigation?
We continued to interview more witnesses. I spoke to a number of employees at the carnival. No one really saw anything except for one witness, Mr. Knack. He told us that on the day of the performance, he saw the armorer loading the gun at the prop tent.
So after speaking with that witness, what did you do?
Well, the witness actually told us that on July 14th, he looked at the armorer and saw that she was loading bullets into the gun very quickly. And then she ran and set it in its place for the trip. So after learning that, I went straight to the chief of police and told him what I found.
Did you learn anything else about the ammunition at the carnival?
We did. The team executing the warrant at the carnival came back, and we learned that they had found a number of bullets in the prop tent where the gun was stored.
How did you conclude your investigation?
We looked into the armorer a bit more to see if there was any sort of motivation, to see if there was any criminal liability there. We found no active motive for the prop master to intentionally hurt Mr. Maximilian. So we closed the criminal investigation. And a few weeks later, the Office of the Public Administrator brought forth civil charges.
Thank you, Officer Thorne. No further questions, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor. Now, Mr. Thorne, I wrote this down from your direct examination. You testified that you were a part of that investigation, of the criminal investigation.
Yes, sir.
You said that you were asked to join that investigation.
That's right.
And you conducted a deposition before today's trial, is that right?
That's right.
And you'd be willing to turn to it if I asked you to?
Yes.
I'd like you to turn to page 7 of your deposition. Starting on page 6.
1 second. Oh, yeah, this is mine. All right.
Just let me know when you get.
Page 7. All right, I'm there.
Page 6.
Oh, 6. My bad, my bad.
Because you said you conducted those investigations, is that right, on direct examination?
I conducted interviews after the night of. So I conducted 2 interviews on the night of the shooting. And then after that, working the investigations in the following days, we conducted more investigation, more interviews.
Well, I'd like you to read alongside with me as I read aloud, because you didn't you didn't conduct those interviews on them. You said.
That's right. We interviewed the assistant and the prop master on the night of. I didn't assist with those interviews. I didn't ask any questions. It was the following days, the following interviews that I actually conducted.
Starting on line 178, it says, how did you assist in these interviews? You said, I just sat in and listened. They gave me an option to ask any questions, but I didn't feel the need. Then going further, did Gabby Gray or Angel Ashmore say anything? No, nothing that I recall. And then the next one, what conclusion did the investigation reach? And you say, the Buckler PD homicide unit determined that it was a tragic accident. Not me and my team that was going into this investigation, we concluded it was a tragic accident. You say it was the Buckler PD who reached that conclusion.
That's right. The Buckler PD, the local police department here, asked me to join on their investigation. I was a part of the team.
But if we look at the next line of questioning here, you say, you're asked, so if you agreed that there was no criminal wrongdoing, why are you involved in this lawsuit? And to that, you said, well, counsel, as you hopefully remember from law school, just because there was no criminal wrongdoing doesn't mean there wasn't civil liability. Plus, I originally wasn't part of this lawsuit. A few months ago, I spoke with the Office of Public Administrators for Shield County. You were asked if you agreed there was no criminal wrongdoing, why are you involved in this lawsuit? You didn't say, I was a key part of that investigation. I conducted interviews. I went around. You said nothing of the sort. All you said was that you reached out to the estate.
That's not true. If you go to line 202, they say, how did this involve you? I say, the public administrator has the power to designate a party representative for this case. So we discussed me being the party representative. After all, given what I had seen and my assistance with the homicide investigation, I thought I could be helpful in this case. I was a part of the homicide investigation. This is a civil suit. I asked if I could talk about what I found in that investigation.
But in this deposition, you didn't mention any of those details about the homicide investigation. When you were asked, all you said was that the Buckler PD made that conclusion and that you were there to oversee a couple of those interviews.
Yes, but I said, after all, given what I'd seen in my assistance with the homicide investigation, I thought I could be helpful in this case. I talked about how I thought it could be helpful from what I'd seen. They never asked me what specifically that was.
Then I'd like to move on to talk about whether or not you had a vendetta about against Legacy Lampert?
Whatever you need, sir.
Because you knew Legacy Lampert before your days on the force. You met him in high school, is that right?
That's right. We went to high school together and I've investigated him a couple times over the years.
And in high school, you didn't like him, is that correct?
That's right. He would frequently cheat on his tests and he wasn't a very nice guy to me.
You thought he got away with everything.
At times.
In fact, at one point you caught him cheating on a test, is that right?
That's right.
And he didn't get in trouble?
That's right.
You did.
Almost. I almost lost my scholarship, but thankfully it didn't go away.
That's right. When you said he was cheating, you're the one who almost lost your scholarship.
Right, but thankfully nothing came about that.
But you blame all of that, almost losing your scholarship. Well, you blame that on Legacy Lampert, is that correct?
That's right. He was the one who had talked to the administrators and tried to pull my scholarship.
Then I want to talk to you about how your relationship progressed.
All right.
Because after high school, you went and joined the police force, is that right?
That's right.
And on that force, you started investigating Legacy Lampert.
That's right. I wanted to see if there was any financial crimes. I didn't find any evidence of financial crimes over my investigation.
That's right, but you didn't find any evidence and you kept investigating, all right?
That's right. I wanted to see if there was evidence. So I kept investigating to see if there was something that I had missed.
And your bosses asked you to stop.
That's right.
You ignored them.
That's right. I wanted to continue to investigate to see if there was something there.
You ignored them and then you were fired from the police force.
That's right.
Then I want to talk about how that might be affecting your testimony in today's case. Because you told us about your further investigations at the Midlands Bureau of Intelligence, is that right?
Of investigation, no one's Bureau of investigation, but yes.
And you said that, well, you joined undercover at that carnival,
That's right, in 2023, last summer.
but you didn't find any evidence for those financial crimes.
That's right. That's why I'm only here to talk about the shooting. We're here to talk about Mr. Maximilian.
And before even joining that undercover operation, well, you asked your bosses whether you could invest.
That's right.
They said no.
That's right. And so I waited for their go-ahead. A couple years later, they finally told me since the carnival was back in town that I could investigate.
Well, you didn't just wait for their go-ahead. The only way you got that green light was through an anonymous tip. Is that correct?
That's right. And unfortunately, that tip is confidential, so I can't tell you a lot of details about it.
So you can't tell us any details about that tip, which is the only reason you were allowed to investigate.
That's right. It's confidential. It's the Bureau's standards.
So if those are the reasons why you were on this investigation, I want to talk about who you're representing.
Okay.
Because you're here with a police badge, right?
Yes, sir.
But you're not here on behalf of the state.
That's right. This is a civil lawsuit brought by the Office of the Public Administrator.
You're here for the Office of the Public Administrator.
That's right. I thought I could be helpful.
And you reached out to them to be here today.
That's right. I had seen a lot of things firsthand, interviewed people, so I thought I could help them out in their trial here.
I have no further questions.
No redirect, Your Honor. I just ask that my witness be excused.
Thank you.
Yes, Your Honor. The defense calls Legacy Lampert to stand. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Could you please introduce yourself to the members of the jury?
Sure. Hello there. My name is Legacy Lampert.
And what do you do for a living, Mr. Lampert?
I own a carnival. Lampert Family Carnival.
How'd you get into it?
Well, like in the name, it's a family thing. My great-grandfather opened the carnival at the beginning of the 20th century, and since then, it's been passed down to our family. You should see our family photo album. It's very the greatest showman, you know.
So why are you here today, Mr. Lampert?
In July of last year, we lost one of our staff members, a magician named Maximilian, who passed away during a performance. Her estate is suing the carnival. I'm here to represent my business.
And how did you meet Maximilian in the first place?
Well, you know, I like to think I'm a pretty good entertainment researcher, but nobody's better than my daughter, Abigail. She's 13. She showed me a TikTok of Maximilian pulling 12 rabbits out of a hat consecutively. It was a yarmulke, and that's a very small hat.
Well, sir, did you ever reach out to that magician?
Of course, I direct DM'd her and, said that my daughter was a big fan and, well, that I like the yarmulke trick. And I told her if she ever wanted to headline full time, she should come down to the carnival.
Did you ever have further communication on that?
Yes, instead of over direct DMs, we started emailing, struck a deal. We hired Miss Maximilian to be an independent contractor and do magic for us. She was excellent.
Sir, you mentioned that Miss Maximilian, well, she passed away doing a trick. What was that trick?
It was a trick called the bullet catch.
Did you ever talk to her about that trick?
Yes, we talked about it. I asked her if she would do the bullet catch, but at first she said no, that she was uncomfortable with it. She explained that even though she had done it in the past, she was worried about blank rounds. That even if they're not live rounds in it, well, they can still be dangerous if up close.
And how did she respond?
Well, I'm not proud to say it, but I got a little upset. Told her that she was under contract, that she was supposed to do the bullet catch, and that was fine. She got very upset and stormed out.
Did you ever revisit that conversation?
Yes, we did. After a couple hours of cool down time and a call with my wife, she reminded me how hard-headed I could be. I realized that Max was right to storm out. So I asked her if she would come back in so I could apologize to her.
And what did you say?
Well, she came back in, which was kind of her. And I told her I was sorry for trying to force her to do it. And that, she wasn't contractually obliged to do the trick. If she was uncomfortable, she didn't have to do it at all.
And was that contractual obligation or lack thereof, was that present in that contract?
Absolutely. So we gave her a contract and we hired her. That was what was reflected in it. It said nothing about forcing her to do any kind of trick.
And would you recognize that contract if you were to see it today?
Absolutely.
I'd ask you to flip that contract.
Number two?
Yeah.
Number two, all right.
And this exhibit has been pre. Now, what does that second paragraph say?
The second paragraph talks about how Max is an independent contractor, how they would come up with the act, and if we don't like it, we don't have to pay them. But there was nothing in this contract about forcing them to do any kind of trick. Me and Max looked over this contract together in that second conversation.
Then if that's how your conversation went, I want to talk about the night of the trick. Were you there for it?
Yes, I was.
What happened?
Well, I brought along Abigail. She was a big fan of Max's. And so we were sitting next to each other, and Max's co-star, shot the gun. And the way that Max fell, you could tell immediately something was wrong. So Abigail started crying, and then the crowd started screaming and running.
What did you do?
In the commotion, I wanted to make sure that Abigail didn't get lost, so I grabbed her and I picked her up, and then we walked towards the exit and tried to funnel people out the whole time.
What did you do afterwards?
Right, so I figured it wasn't a good place to have a kid anymore. So I left and dropped Abigail off at home. And then from there, I went to the emergency room to check in with my staff.
Then I want to talk about the police investigation into this. You know someone by the name of Tav Thorne?
Yeah. Yeah, I know Mr. Thorne. He's a financial investigator sitting right over there. For years, he's been putting me under the microscope.
Were you here for the testimony of Mr. Thorne today?
Yeah, I was.
And did you hear him say that he was overseeing those interviews after the trip?
Yes.
So did you ever see Tav Thorne that night?
No. Mr. Thorne never interviewed me, although I had seen him at the carnival leading up to the trip.
And in those sightings earlier on, did you talk to him?
Yeah, about a week prior, I'm walking through the carnival and I saw him, but he wasn't wearing a police uniform. He was wearing one of our uniforms that we have at the carnival. So I went up to him and I was like, Mr. Thorne, is that you? And he pretended not to know what I was talking about, said his name was Gordy or something. And I figured I was under investigation again.
Thank you, sir. I have no further questions.
Cross-examination, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Mr. Lambert.
How are you?
Good. My name is Eleanor Mancina, and I have some questions for you on behalf of the plaintiff.
Sounds good to me.
I want to start by talking about your carnival. Last summer, your carnival was struggling financially, right?
Right, absolutely. It's been a struggle to get out of the pandemic and get people coming back in. We were on a downturn.
You were cutting costs at the carnival.
Where we could, absolutely.
You needed to maintain your family's legacy, right?
That would certainly be nice. Legacy is my first name after all.
And Mr. Maximilian, he was the key to keeping your carnival afloat.
How so?
You needed him to perform the bullet catch trick, right?
Right. We wanted them to perform the trick to get in some new people. These tricks were kind of dry after, we're not a traveling carnival. We pull from the same group every time. Everything had already been seen.
Actually, you needed a sold-out performance on July 14th, right?
Bingo.
So you needed him to perform that trick, no matter what, right?
Well, sure, if he was comfortable.
Actually, told us today you threatened him into performing the bullet catch trick, right, Mr. Lambert?
Well, at first I told him he was contractually obliged to, but then we walked through the contract together. I apologized. He only had to do it if he was comfortable.
Thank you for that, but I just need a yes or no to my question. You threatened Mr. Maximilian into performing the bullet catch trick?
At first, yes.
And then you had a conversation about it afterwards, right?
Sure.
Told you that he would perform that trick if your carnival took the necessary safety precautions.
That's right.
So let's talk about those precautions. One of them was that he asked for you to purchase blanks, right?
That's true.
Now, every time one of your employees has to purchase something, they have to fill out an expense request, right?
That's absolutely right. Yes, ma'am.
You would recognize the expense request for the gun and blanks that Mr. Maximilian used, right?
I'm sure.
If you could flip to Exhibit 3 in that binder in front of you.
Sorry, it's gonna take a second now. One, 6, 5, 4. There we go.
This is a copy of that expense request.
Yes, ma'am. Looks like it.
Looks fair and accurate?
As far as I can tell.
The plaintiff offers Exhibit 3 into evidence, noting that there's a stipulation that weighs off hearsay objections.
No objections at this time, Your Honor.
So now I'd just like to talk about the ammunition that was purchased for this act. Now, you know that actually that ammunition was purchased from a local gun club, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And right here on this expense request, it states that that is the most likely ammunition to have both bullets and blanks mixed, right?
That's right. We were cognizant of that. That's why we had our armorer, Ms. Ashmore, check them, double check them, triple check them before that trick.
We'll get into Ms. Ashmore in just a second. But Mr. Lampert, it states here that that's the most likely cause of having bullets and blanks mixed, right?
That's what it says.
You never warned Mr. Maximilian of that possibility of a bullet being there, did you?
No, absolutely not. There wasn't going to be a bullet in there.
Now, if you could flip to the contract right here in Exhibit 2, noting that Exhibit 2 has already been entered into evidence. This is the contract that you and Mr. Maximilian signed for his work at your carnival, right?
It is. Yes, ma'am.
Nowhere in this contract does it state that there was a possibility that bullets would be in your prop tent, right?
No, we promised to maintain and keep a safe work environment, but we don't specify anything about bullets in a prop tent or a lack thereof.
So that's yes to my question. Nowhere in this contract did Mr. Maximilian agree that there was a possibility that bullets could be on site, right?
Didn't agree, didn't disagree. We didn't talk about it.
But you heard today, the bullets were at your carnival, right?
Sure, it's a big prop tent, that makes sense to me.
Your prop master, Angel Ashmore, purchased bullets.
Sure,
Miss Gray, she saw a box of bullets at the prop tent.
right, I believe those were the ones that Angel said she was checking right before the trip.
Officer Thorne, he testified that a bullet was found inside of your prop tent the exact day after Mr. Maximilian was killed, right?
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me, it's a big carnival, you know, but I'm 100% confident that there was not a bullet in that gun.
Mr. Lampert, saying that you're confident. You weren't with Angel Ashmore when she was loading that gun, were you?
No, ma'am, but I trust Miss Ashmore, she's never failed me before. And she said she double-checked it, triple-checked it.
I'm not asking you about what you trust. I'm asking you about what you know. You were not with Angel Ashmore when they loaded that gun, were you?
No, I wasn't.
So you cannot say for certain that there was not a bullet inside of that gun, can you?
Look, I couldn't tell you for certain, you know, I've got 300 employees, I don't look over their shoulders.
Is that a yes to my question? You don't know for certain if there was a bullet inside of that gun on July 14th?
I couldn't tell you, but I don't think so.
But what you do know is that Mr. Maximilian was shot by a gun that your carnival provided, right?
Yeah.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
No redirect, Your Honor. Just ask that Mr. Legacy be excused.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we'll fill out our ballots really quickly, and just let me know whenever you guys are done. Here's my. Oh, you're done? Okay, perfect. Okay, so then I don't think we have to wait to get comments, so Well, I'm Danielle. I am a third-year law student at Penn State, doing everything in the news and I don't know, talk about Pennsylvania. I got my BA at Loyola Marymount, Gwilt, Santa Monica. I did 4 years of undergrad mock trial. And I work at a medical malpractice defense firm in Manhattan Beach. So that's me. If you guys want to introduce yourselves.
I'm Richard Rosenthal, been practicing law for 40 years, graduated from BU School of Law, was a moot court finalist in there, but it's an appellate competition. And I am a litigator, mostly in the entertainment industry.
Valentina Kudavtseva, this is my colleague. So yeah, we do litigation, mostly entertainment and transactional also entertainment. I went to UCLA for undergrad, I went to University of Miami for law school. And I usually judge for Pepperdine School of Law. Nice to be back though.
Yeah, I've never done a round like this. So it was very interesting because I feel like witnesses in legal trials, obviously you guys have more experience than me, but they're not as good and not as practiced, and you kind of can't predict what they're going to say in that way. Otherwise, I think it was really good. I think there was a lot of good use of different pieces of evidence in different ways, and I think you both were really good at manipulating it to be good for your side, given however the witness was stating it. Otherwise, I know it's not about attorneys as much, but I thought objections were good. I think it's kind of tricky because I was trying to remember which ones you weren't allowed to object to in certain witnesses, but other than that, I think everything was good. Everything was very clear and concise, and that's kind of what I can ask for.
Okay, I mean, I've been called as a witness twice at trial, but by the other side, which I think is a huge mistake. You should not call a adversary as a witness. You should be called sympathetic witnesses. So in terms of this trial, which had 2 sympathetic witnesses on both sides, I thought the witnesses were fairly good at being consistent, not being shaken by cross-examination, and it was entertaining. The 2 sympathy witnesses were both, I mean, that was just very interesting because they were almost taking the same position, but from 2 slightly different perspectives. And that I thought was really interesting because, if I were a juror having to decide this case, obviously I would have seen a lot more evidence than this. But I think it would be tough, and obviously we know what this case is based on, which turns out also to have been a fairly difficult case to decide.
Yeah, so yes, I agree with what you said. It was very weird just judging the witnesses versus I usually judge the lawyer's performance. But yes, we were just stuck with really bad facts, but I thought everyone did really good. And as a lawyer, I like to do this.
Thank you.
It was very good.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't think you have to go through contract law or do anything like that to know that contract was absolutely horrible. I mean, reading that was, the font,
It's supposed to be handwritten.
Yeah.
The font is the idea of a handwritten. That's why things are scribbled out.
The handwritten is the same font as the signature.
Everyone has the same handwriting.
It's brutal. But you did the best with what you could. That's kind of what you could do, especially in a situation which was you just got all this information. I know, and also it's kind of a weird kind of trial setup. So yeah, if you have any questions, you can ask me. I won't stick around for long. Nobody's gonna ask me anything, but it's like, yeah. Otherwise,
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming.
Yeah. I'm so sorry you're my last witness ever. You're my last witness ever.